Welcome everybody, welcome to the Rebel Crone. And today for my first interview, I am so excited to have the beautiful Sylvi Salinas with me. She's a very dear friend, and the reason that I chose to interview her today is because I think she is a spectacular, mature woman. And that is what this channel and that is what the Rebel Crone is all about. It's about celebrating women at all ages, but especially us women that have come into our beingness and into our personal power. And we've done that through age and through learning many lessons. And, I say wisdom won through lessons learned. And, we're living beautiful lives now. And we want to help inspire other women along the way. So welcome, Sylvi.
Thank you for having me.
So wonderful. Let me give you a little bit of background, because it's always hard to talk about ourselves, but I'm going to break the ice here.
Okay.
Because you have a pretty impressive background. And Sylvi has been over 33 years in the healing professions as a trainer, an instructor, a healer, a mentor, a coach for women. She's started in massage therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that led to being a hypnotherapist, a conscious language guide and instructor, Tamado Academy practitioner, and that's sound, color, movement, and that's in the shamanic arts, correct? Resonance repatterning practitioner, resonance repatterning instructor, a family constellations practitioner, counsel guide trainer for the Indigenous Americas. I mean, a lot of these I would love to learn more about. So we'll have to have you back and kind of dive into some of these separate ones because they sound fascinating. And also another thing I love about Sylvi is that she's an incredible dancer and musician and is really just one of these wonderful free spirits as far as creativity and expressing herself through her body. So that gives you just a little idea about who we're talking today. And first what I want to go into, because we have quite a few things to talk about, is so I'd like to hear from you. Maybe you could share with our listeners there a little bit about what the aging process has been. And we talked about that before, often coming up to perimenopause and menopause, transitioning over can be difficult for women. Now you've left all this healing life and as a mentor and as a healer behind, right? I should say behind, but you've moved on.
Yes, I moved on just a year ago.
I didn't know that.
Very recently.
Well, tell me about what life is like now for you.
Life right now is very fulfilling in that I know the work that I've done with others, the guidance that I have provided with others has left little seeds. And I know that only because people call from time to time and will let me know, remember when you did this and this? I said, what would Sylvi have done? I was like, wow, that to me is the reward for all of those years. And I learned from all of them as well, of course. So now I get to relax. I don't have to be busy doing. And we're kind of return to a simplicity of life. Which is so beautiful. I can dance whenever I want to. I can leave for a whole weekend and go to a dance weekend. I can write music. I'm not playing with a band anymore. And when I become inspired, I can write a piece of music. I can read non-self-help books for the first time ever. I've got hundreds of self-help books over the years. That was my focus, and rightly so. And now I'm able to read all kinds of novels, fiction. Mostly my preference is about those that contain characters that change and have transformation. So, and play games with my friends.
Yes, we play games. We play some
and travel
fun
when
competitive
I want to.
games.
Yes, competitive games. And I can
go.
travel when I love to travel.
Nice.
So,
but you're also serving in a way too. Can you talk a little bit about your Airbnb that you're doing at the house?
yes, I do manage our Airbnb. It's connected to our house, but it's very private. And I'm thoroughly enjoying writing handwritten notes to our guests who come in, giving them special handmade chocolates from a shop here in town, and just setting the space in a very clean, energetic way, comfortable. So
you're planting more seeds because those seeds go out. You had sent me an article where you were rated as one of the top. Was it like the top 9 Airbnb
best places to experience, unforgettable places to experience in Santa Fe? This is an online magazine called Only in New Mexico, because they did research, and out of all of the, I don't know, thousands of Airbnbs, VRBOs,
you are
amazing.
in the top. And I read the reviews. So I read the reviews, and every single one of them pointed to just the beauty of the space they came into, how well it was attended and loved, and they just felt surrounded and encompassed in a way that made them feel special. And like I've said many times in my videos, that we serve in all different kinds of ways, and sometimes it's very quietly, maybe it's just reading a book and self-reflecting and just being in harmony with ourselves, and then other times it's sowing like little seeds of things. And when I was struck when I read that is about what a powerful way of just sending this smile from your heart to other people's hearts that then go out to, back into their world. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful expression of grace. So
thank you very much.
So you're still a service, and you still of service to me, because every time we get together, and your smile and your joy and your grace and just our relationship is so inspiring. But as we know that we don't just, like, you didn't just pop out of the oven like fully formed and with grace and beauty of spirit and encompassment of heart and all of that we often have to learn a lot of lessons. And I specifically had asked Sylvi if she would think about maybe pick one pivotal time in her life that was life-changing, because this is about celebrating older women and our wisdom. So I want to just gather those stories, and I want to hear from you about a specific time that you felt like turned your life around. And if you could share that with everybody, I'm most honored.
Thank you. I would love to share this with you. What has brought me to this point in my life where I feel happier than ever is one moment in time when I was 39 years old and found myself in a very toxic relationship with a person who had a serious drug addiction. And I panicked, and I got angry, and I was desperate because he was the one. I knew he was the one. He was a dancer, he was a musician, very creative, fun. And then, boom, he came home after being out all night. One night, he was living with me at the time, and said he had been at this drug house all night and revealed he has a major drug addiction. I found a counselor, a therapist who specialized in that addiction.
And that was a big step for you, correct? Is reaching out to a therapist. Had you done that before?
I had.
You had, okay.
So it wasn't a major step, and this was more out of, what am I going to do with this situation? How am I going to live with this? I got to live with it. He's the one. Well, how could this be?
Yeah.
I need some help.
Somebody tell me. How can I change him?
Somebody tell me how I'm going to fix this.
How I'm going to fix this situation.
You bet.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a jewel of a therapist who's not particularly traditional, and yet she is a chemical dependency counselor, therapist. And she said, come in tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So I go in, just busy with it. She said, okay, we're going to pause for a minute and take a little breath. I said, okay. Well, what are we going to do about him? How are we going to fix him? How am I going to live with this? And she said, well, we're going to talk about you. And I said, me? Well, I'm not the problem. It's him. She said, okay. And that was that was the beginning of my journey of self-discovery, self-awakening, coming into my own power, self-worth, self-confidence. And we started with boundaries. It was boundaries. Nobody teaches you that in school. Nobody taught me that at home. Nobody used that word ever.
Because we didn't have elders that were around of wisdom that could share these things. Because this is like 101 stuff that we learn later on the hard way. 101 stuff. It begins and ends here within us and our boundaries.
Or
so important.
Having been raised, I was adopted with beautiful parents who were never taught boundaries, or whose boundaries had been broken. And so they didn't know how to role model it.
Yeah.
Learning about boundaries was my first lesson, and a long list of lessons that followed. And it is I was telling Elisa earlier, it was kind of like under the umbrella of loving yourself. How to love yourself. Well, I do love myself. Really? And how is it that you didn't see that this person you thought was so beautiful and talented had a serious drug issue? Oh. Again, and it...
Well, because they're like always, they're signs, right? There's little signs
yes.
along the way.
That I ignored.
I always say is that any lesson that I had to learn the hard way in life, I look back and I know, I had little angel on my shoulder going, maybe not, maybe that. And I'd be like, and I went my own way with it. But I can't ever get to truly get mad or upset with God or the universe or creator or source or anything. It's just like, you know what? I had angels talking to me. I just didn't want to listen.
And I know now that this was a blessing. Yeah. I thank him to this day for coming to live with me and giving me the opportunity to learn a lesson and shift my life course in a very powerful way. So when I learned how to hold this physical boundary and emotional, those are all kinds of boundaries, emotional boundary, mental boundaries, and say, you can't come home if you've been out at this drug house all night until you have been sober for 24 hours. And then you call me and you tell me you've been sober for 24 hours. I'll say, cool. In 24 more hours, then you can come home. That was really hard for me because I was afraid I was going to lose him. This magnificent opportunity of a relationship was going to lose him. And my therapist said, well, let's just see what happens, because he had been with a string of other women living with them who all asked him to move out because of his drug use. She said, you be different. I invite you to stay in this relationship. So number one, you can practice all these new skills that you're learning. And number two, realize that you are worth having someone who loves you, who's capable of loving you, and who's available. And three, maybe he might get it that he needs to leave because he sees how his behavior is affecting you.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack. I mean, I want you to keep going. I mean to interrupt because I want to keep hearing about that, but there's just so many gems in what you're talking about. I mean, isn't it hard sometimes because like the healthy patterns and the truth of living in a life in integrity and in alignment and in a beautiful, loving way. I mean, it's just all so connected. You learn one, you do this, and it's that. I mean, there's just like personal boundaries comes into the importance of self-love. Nothing can actually transpire or grow in your life until you grow in a positive way, until you love yourself, and so amen. Okay, keep going with your story.
Okay. And so I did. I continued to hold these boundaries, and he went along with them. And then after a while, it did become so uncomfortable for him. I mean, I wanted to ask him to leave so many times, because I kept getting more and more conscious, coming more and more into my authenticity, who I am. Oh, I'm learning who I really am at the core of my being. Wow, that's a pretty cool person.
And you start needing that less and less. Like whatever that was feeding before,
Yes.
you started needing it less and less. And you're like,
and at the same time, I still loved him.
yeah.
I loved him so much. He was the best dancer. People told us we danced like Fred and Ginger when we were dancing swing. It was just, there were so many like dream aspects of him that it was really, really hard to let go of. So I allowed him to stay in my house. I allowed myself to
go through a process.
Don't say anything. It was the process. It was 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And finally he said, you know what? Because another stipulation was that he had to be in therapy and he had to be going to AA meetings, which he did most of the time. Yeah. And so he learned a lot also about himself. Still would relapse though. Maybe could go 3 months and then would relapse. And at the end of all things, he said, you know what, I really get how my behavior is affecting you in a not cool way. So I'm going to leave. And I was like, okay, thank you. And it was the first time he had taken ownership.
Wow. But he only did that because you took ownership of yourself.
Correct.
I always use the analogy that if somebody you're in a dysfunctional relationship, it's like stepping on the tennis court and they lob their dysfunctional, serve, and then you're on the other side, you hit back and you go back and pretty soon you're like, I don't want to play that game, but you just are sitting there, but you're still in the game. But eventually you walk off the court and the person is just left there and they're like, because you love yourself enough, you exit it, and they're just left there with themselves. They can't blame it on you anymore, because I'm sure through all those times he was probably, that Sylvi's just and you're thinking he's but when you got healthy, it gave him the opportunity. Self-love is the first step. That's of loving anybody else, is to love yourself.
Yeah.
And
I got the great gift of learning how to develop these new skills of self-love, self-worth, of letting go of what's important, sorting out what's priority here and what isn't. How to communicate consciously. When you do this is how I feel. What are you hearing me say? You reflect back. I learned how to reflect, how to listen, when to speak, when not to speak. I wouldn't have learned that if I had asked him to leave in the beginning, because I really don't learn well about myself unless I'm interacting with someone else or nature. Of course, nature is the big teacher. Because in the past, I had always been the one to leave relationships as well. Just run.
I know. I'm a very similar story with my first marriage. I've been married a few times. My first marriage was very much like that. I actually married the man that, because I'd been jumping out of relationships. It would go for about a year and then I'd leave it. And it was like, all right, I really have to commit for me, because I knew this as a young woman, that I needed to look at my stuff unless I was committed in a relationship, because I wouldn't just leave it and I wouldn't cheat or I wouldn't, deflect, is that I would be sitting in my own thing. And I did that. I made myself sit in my stuff. Now, it wasn't the right relationship, but I had a choice of growing, and I grew out of it, and it wasn't right, but thank God for that relationship.
Well,
where it brought me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm eternally grateful for this. Yeah. This wonderful man who is still here to this day, which is incredible to me. Oh. And we don't talk very much anymore because he's off doing his own thing and I am. But I got to then practice on all subsequent relationships that came along.
The game just keeps going up and getting better, doesn't it?
And then along the way, I became devoted to this game. Of who am I? What in this tote bag of baggage here do I need to address next? Oh, this is a good one. I'll try this one. I mean
I
it.
hear you.
And so
It gets to a certain point you get over where it's scary, or it's, it's you're not
Oh.
looking forward to it. It's like, well, now what can I clarify now in myself?
it takes a bold fearlessness
Yes.
to look at your stuff. And it's not your fault. And now that you know what your stuff is, you can acknowledge what it is, you have to identify it. Now it is your responsibility to do something about it if you want to change how you experience life and how others experience you. I went to therapy at 39 for 7 years, once a week,
A full
without
cycle.
fail, unless I was out of town. A full cycle. And then for 5 more years, or in addition to that, twice a week, I would go to her, once for private and once for group sessions, because I was like, okay, this is a game. Now you've got me. Now you've got my attention. I want to know, how do I upgrade my life? How do I let go and transform these behaviors that aren't serving me or anybody else anymore? This isn't fun. I want to have fun. I'm all into fun. I like to play.
I like that about you.
I like to play. So let's make this fun. And so consequently, while I was working with her in sessions, then I discovered other things, hypnotherapy. Oh, what can you do with that? And I discovered Tamado. What can you do with sound and color and movement? What can you do with that? And so forth, until I got to this one practice of resonance repatterning, which was like a composite, a comprehensive composite of hundreds of different kinds of transformational modalities in a specific process that you use. And I thought, that's handy, and you could use it on yourself. You can share it with others, and so that's how it just built all these layers of transformative magic. That if you use it,
it works.
It works, but you have to use it, and that's what I was willing to do. You have to have that willingness.
And it just, because this is about, helping, this channel is about helping other women come into aging process gracefully, because there's nothing easy about being a woman in this society and growing old, getting wrinkles, getting gray hair, skin by, we got a little saggier, but we're still beautiful, but it's a different kind of beauty, but we're not celebrating this world as that. And it's not just the outer stuff, it's that inner beauty, and
that's all that matters.
So I just felt like we just sat here and we've had a master class in aging from the beautiful Sylvi.
Oh,
it's so, because really, I mean, those choices that you made, these hard decisions of being honest with yourself, and really digging in deep,
for better
and
or
deep,
worse,
and deep, and years of going in, that it is there, the transformation, and age came to you in a graceful way.
Because I remember what we would say at the end of all my group sessions was, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, aging, natural cycle, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This is just
my attitude,
just
my
something I
perspective,
live by.
My heart, all those things we can change.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And so now I get it. This rose is wilting and fading.
In one sense, in a physical sense, but
for
another
the sense.
thing, there's something blooming inside.
The beauty that's coming out is just becoming more and more fragrant. And attractive.
And intoxicating, attractive in a beautiful way that people are drawn to you. The people are just like, I want to talk to her. Look at that sparkle in her eye. Look at the joy in her step. Look at just her countenance. And what is that? How do I people want to be around that. So I think let's look down, because we have a few different ages and a lot of situations with different women listening. And I think of younger women coming into their 40s, perimenopausal years, where this, like I say, has been a master class in, this is the time to get set up, to be able to do this transition, gracefully. And to blossom during it.
Yes.
Now, what advice would you say for women that maybe were caught up in, taking care of their family, taking care of a spouse, and they were still very much outward oriented, or maybe their job and their career, and they through their 40s, serving outwards, and then they hit 50s, and then boom, change starts happening, and all of a sudden they're like, the focus comes inward. I mean, just naturally, the lens comes inward, and they haven't done that work. I mean, is it too late now? Is it like, what do you do? Could you talk a little bit about some advice for, our peers that might not have made those choices earlier on?
I believe it's never too late. Ever too late. Ever.
And you do recommend the same step to start with, right? Is self-love, boundaries. I mean, I guess it's probably is more typical. It's hard because we're making a generality, but these are good generalities. They're the stepping stones, right?
Yes. This is a hard one because everyone is so individual and so different. And so what appeals to you may not appeal to you or you. I would, if you're struggling with aging and what to do or how to be,
who am I?
How to accept.
Who am I now?
Yeah. Who are you now? I would just explore different avenues of healing processes. Go online, explore the different aspects of how you can heal. What feels best to you? Do you want to do it privately? Would you like to do it with a group?
Maybe you just need to dance.
Or maybe you just need to dance.
Oh my God, how fun.
Come to a contra dance. This is what got me.
Contra dance. I never heard of it until I met you.
Contra dancing is how I met the toxic drug guy that saved my life.
And also how you met the beautiful man that you're with now, too.
Well, that's true.
That's full circle, baby.
That's full circle.
That's versus the gift of that.
It wasn't really a contra dance, but it was similar.
Oh, similar, okay.
It was similar.
Dancing.
It was dancing. Contra dancing, do you want me to talk a little about?
Yeah, just a little thing, because it's like
thing.
a fun little thing. Like I'm gonna grab Mike and we're gonna go to one of those.
Yes, you are.
And I think because I like to dance.
I get goosebumps when I talk about it because it's very community oriented. It's very social. You don't have to have a partner to go because you change partners after every set. The sets, you can come 30 minutes before a dance and learn some of the steps, some of the basic movements. They're movements. It's like square dancing except different formation, whereas instead of a square, there are long lines. It's not line dancing. It's doing, crossovers and swings together. And it's movement. It's always movement up and down the lines in sets of couples. And there's always live music. I used to play live music for some of these. And there's just a joy that comes. People are only there to dance. There's no other agenda. Well, most of the time, who knows? Who knows? Sometimes I went looking in my early years for a man. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. But it's just fun. And
I think that's the thing, is have fun.
Yes.
It's like do something to feed your soul.
Yes.
Because as we get older, it's all about feeding the interior. As you know, ladies, is that when there's a certain point in life, and I think it has to do with hormonal changes and just the biology of being a woman, is that things shift, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't care about taking care of people anymore. I really don't. I mean, that's a blessing that comes. A lot of blessings come with age, where I'm naturally inner focused. Like I don't care what you think of me. I'm gonna put on what I want to put on. I'm gonna say what I need to say. Hopefully with sensitivity and love. But I'm just no longer dictated out there trying to please people. So that's natural.
So you're coming into your wholeness.
It's natural, yes.
And that was another thing I investigated was codependence. Mm-hmm. Your being in my life is determinant upon whether or not I'm happy. Your being in my life enhances my happiness.
Because you're right, because happiness is your own response.
Yes.
All this comes down to, right, is our responsibility to our own happiness, our own well-being is us. It's not determined on anybody else in our world.
Yes.
You know, and that's like the good news.
Yes.
The good news is that, yeah, you know, my state of mind, my thinking I'm a victim of this and life dealt me this or whatever. I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. But basically, here you are right now, you know, and right now your responsibility is you. It's not to save the world. It's not to save your community. It's not to save every puppy and kitten out there, even though we really want to, you know. But if they come to us, then I do save them. But, you know, our first responsibility is here, is this
and then,
precious heart.
Once you take responsibility for your own well-being, everybody naturally benefits from that. That was another big lesson which came first with holding boundaries, and then everything else unfolded from there.
Mm-hmm.
So enjoy your freedom, explore who you are through books, through dancing, through doing what you love, writing, sewing, creating, going for walks in nature, just being silent in nature. Listen to what the trees have to tell you. Listen to the voices that you hear that you think are in your head, but are they? Who knows?
I know, exactly. The little angels and sprites and are talking. You know, they are very real, and they're there and sharing.
And once you open up to possibilities, you don't have to know what it is. They'll come to you. Attract them to you. Do a little dance. Say, oh, I choose to have something amazing come into my life. Boom. Who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen? I know. You know, it's interesting. I did an interview with Sylvi and a handful of other women a couple of weeks ago, just on their unique aging process. And first, I have to say that I'm just very blessed here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with amazing women. And I'm always like, just like transparent in age. I'm 63 years old, and you can share your age.
I'm 67 going on 68.
And everybody I interviewed, I was the youngster in the bunch, which is really weird because now I always feel when I'm out and about doing things, I'm always like the oldest person. And I was interviewing these spectacular women one by one, and I realized they're all older than me in their, you know, late 60s, 70, mid 70s, and to a T. Every single one of them says it's just getting better. That was like a mind blower to me, because somehow, even in the wisdom I have of, you know, in my age, because of the work that I've done, I think, okay, well, I'm older and I didn't really, like, I know it's going to get better, but I didn't really, like, it didn't land. I didn't see it in like that way. I wasn't like zoning in on it. And then when to hear all these women say, and especially around 70, each one said, you know, something magical happens at 70. Our society's like, you know, we're cast aside. It's like, okay, now you're in your 60s. See ya. 70s.
Out. 80s.
Oh my
what?
God. What could happen? I haven't yet interviewed a woman in her 80s. I can't wait to do that and find out the magic that's available to a woman in her 80s. Because that's really, it comes down for me, is the magic. And magic is, you can call it the grace of God. You can call it, there's so many words around. So don't be put off by the word magic. Magic just means something that is a blessing from the spiritual, that imbues the physical, and that connection and availability.
That seems to happen coincidentally or surreptitiously. Boom.
Yep.
Like
And
little bubbles, little stars, little stars. You know, my mom, I'll just end this by saying, my mother lived, this is my adopted mom, my forever mom. She lived to 89 years old. And she had been divorced from my father, though, for 30, 40, 50 years or something. A long time. And she never remarried. She found, of course, joy in me. But we lived in separate towns, so I wasn't always there. She found a book club that she loved. She found her spirituality choice of a church where she had really good community. That was her main family, and that sustained her until she moved to Austin, where I lived at the time, for the last several years of her life. I think she felt very lonely. And I always wondered, what fulfills you? I never asked her, except I know she was a seamstress. She loved to sew, but then she couldn't see, she couldn't read.
My mother slipped into Alzheimer's, and
As did mine.
I tried, and I think the Alzheimer's stuff starts maybe 10, 15 years before you actually know, because there's a change in personality and stuff, and my mother just wasn't available to, able to share those things. I so wanted her to. But I think, that would be a beautiful topic next time we talk. I'd like to really go into our, aging parents, because a lot of people aren't age. We've either lost our parents. I've lost both mine, but
both of mine.
There's this whole thing of navigating that terrain in our own hearts, whether it's through, and Alzheimer's, a very specific heart. Oh, I can't even tell you how difficult that was to go through and see my beloved mother, this beautiful, vibrant, oh my God, take charge, incredible woman, just go.
Then what do you do?
Go. And
how do you navigate through that?
Would you come back and we can talk about all that? Because
thank you. I'd love to.
A huge and it's not a pandemic, but what do they call it? It's just it's pervasive now in our world. I'm sure to a lot of different reasons we can discuss, but I would love to do that.
Okay.
But I want to thank you so much, my dear friend. Thank you for being here. Cold hands but warm heart. For being here today.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for listening. As always, sisters, we sign off and we go, peace in and love to you all.
Peace and love.
Till next time.